want to touch on one thing that you have on your website actually there, and I'm going to quote you. So I'm going to look aside to quote you. You wrote that now more than ever, the talent is internationally based, not restricted to one city, country, or culture. And, it seems as though that's something that ties directly into, what we see, say, with nearshoring. But I'd love for you to go just a tiny bit into that, because we've touched on it a bit already. But, your thinking in regards to that it's not restricted to one city, one country, and most importantly, culture, because we kind of touched on that a little bit as well. But the cultural aspect of things, how important is that when it comes to, say, tech, for example?
Yes, we wrote that statement before the COVID. Yeah. And if anything, the current state of affairs has, put this idea on steroids. So looking at the tech scene as a whole, up to fairly recently, there was an obsession about moving towards a tech center, Silicon Valley, or your Berlins, your Londons, the usual suspects. And it's always was kind of intertwined with an idea of that to be successful, I have to be physically present, in that particular. The problem with that approach is, for financial reasons of a background, for visa issues, something as mundane as that, the flow of startups that actually can make that transition is pretty small, and it has nothing to do with the talent or with the end product, with an idea, with the startup. Sometimes it comes down to the dumb luck. Have I got the money to make the relocation? Do I have the necessary papers to get the appropriate visa in EU, in the UK, in the US? And we have all those guys left out in the cold. At least this used to be the case. There is no logical reasons why they should be so. And as we see, as the market itself moves towards being fairly agnostic. It used to be the case of you can't go wrong, you can't get fired for buying an IBM. People are now far more open towards, I want an idea, I want a solution that actually solves my problem. And if you are a startup, and if you're based in India, in Ukraine, in Israel, fine, power to you. There is a bit of a meritocracy that is emerging when it comes to where you're actually based. Your offices don't have to be squeezed in the square mile in London. So this used to be the case before COVID, but let's not kid ourselves. The power of interaction is still a significant thing, and there was still the kind of the handshake approach that a startup had to do with a potential client or with an investor. I think COVID has just broken that remaining strand and tore it to shreds. We ourselves, we've done a couple of investments throughout the quarantine period, and we never seen those startups. And we know many other investors that are doing just that. People are working remotely, and we're coming to the era where there will be people hired right now who haven't seen their colleague physically, and are not likely to see them for many months, or God knows, or maybe ever. And that's the new norm. So right now, the physical location is no longer being restricted to, you have to be based just across me. What, and just latest trends have also been very, very significant in the area of the culture, something that you touched on, and I think it's super important. Right now, a startup in China, anyway, has access to the same resources, same Harvard Business Codes, same Y Combinator materials, same research articles, online conferences as their peers. So if you could argue, and you could argue quite successfully, that, well, if you're not based locally, you have no chance because you're just not going to understand the culture, you're not going to get the environment.
Yeah.
Still an important factor. If you want to sell in New York, it's a good idea to be based in New York. But right now, is it a killer? Probably no.
Yeah.
And the trajectory where this is going, I think every day is going to be less and less important where you're from, what your background, and more important about the result. And finally, we see a trend now in the US leading the way, but global, about people becoming more and more aware about equality when it comes to ethnicity, when it comes to gender, when it comes to other things. We are not out of the woods yet, and this is a real issue. But again, the trend, and let's look at the trends. It seems to be, long term, the right one. You're not going to get involved in the politics and the right and wrongs, but it's good to see that we can all agree that it's about the content of the character rather than anything else. And it seems like people are taking it seriously. So everything, when it combines, all right, does it really matter, if a startup was registered in the US or their office is based whenever? All it matters what the guys produce. And I think, like ourselves, like many other VCs, we're becoming more and more comfortable with that idea that it matters little. And many of my friends and colleagues, they just found out that they're going to be working remotely for at least a year to come.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the guys in the UK. Does it now, again, coming to the issue which we talked earlier about the nearshoring and the IT development? Again, does it? In my mind, that border is becoming very, very thin. What is the difference really between nearshoring and people working with you and they happen to be registered on paper in a different structure? They have a different arrangement with the HR. I think it used to be important. People used to be quite proud of the headcount. No longer. And I think these are the good trends in anything. They continue to accelerate. And again, something good is coming out of this pretty horrendous situation. And this kind of equality and being agnostic when it comes to country, area, region, and just focusing on the results, be it startups or service providers, I'm all for it.